So, hello Internet, this is the IPython and Jupyter Dev meeting for May 17th. We have a few people already there today. So let's start. Let's see who's in order. We'll try to stay as usual, kind of high level and only important things to remind everybody. There are several critical bugs in Notebook 4.2. I would like some help to track that down and fix. It's really critical because, for example, every non-Python kernel don't have syntax highlighting. I don't know why it took that long to discover that. Most of extensions are broken because of the require webpack two-headed beast, where require and webpack load modules will basically create modules instance in two different namespace. So if you require a code mirror and you load a mod with code mirror or an extension or something else, it cannot affect the instance of the module which is used by code cells and everything. And otherwise, something prevents kernel from being switched if your kernel is broken, which means that if you have many environments and one environment has disappeared, you literally cannot get a notebook that works again. I think it would be really important to fix that and make a 4.2.1 or 4.3 relatively soon. And otherwise, I'm just working on migrating IPython to Traitlets API 4.2, and I would like to know, because we want to make IPython 5 LTS, that it will rely on a Traitlet version. If we want to make Traitlets 4.2 the long-term support version, or do we release Traitlets 4.3 before? That's
Matthias, I understand you correctly, and you're saying you're getting like 2 instances of code mirror loaded because of require and webpack basically bringing in their own copy?
Yeah. Yes.
Ooh, yeah, that's not good.
Yeah, and the problem is that many extensions use require, so we cannot just say we drop require. And I'm not sure how to get require and webpack point to actually the same instance.
I think you can have webpack pointed, basically tell it that it's going to be like provided by some external code. And so it just assumes that it's going to be there and it's requirable, and then you just have to make sure that that condition actually holds at runtime.
Yeah, I just don't know how to do that, and if someone has more insight on how webpack and require works, I would appreciate some help. But we can do that offline. It's just that, in my opinion, there are pretty critical bugs, especially since I think that Continuum want to ship extensions. And with that, it would probably be completely broken. So, just saying. Okay, I think the next is Jess. Jess, are you on the call?
Yeah, I'm here. Just a quick thing, which is that the Jupyter Education Survey is closed, and I've released the data set on GitHub. I'm still working on doing some initial analysis on it, but if people are interested, you can go ahead and take a look at it. And when I have at least some analysis done on it, I'll send an email out to all the mailing lists and stuff. And also that the repository that it's in on GitHub is like, we created it specifically for Jupyter data sets. So if you have a survey that you collect in the future, or like any other data set that you want to post publicly to the Jupyter community, you should put it in that repository. And there's some instructions there on like how to actually structure the files in that repository.
Thank you very much. Carol, are you there? You're muted.
Yes, we're unmuted now. I am here. Last week I gave a talk at Minnesota's user group, which is kind of a nice cross-section between academics, DevOpsy people, and web developers, and talking about how to use Jupyter Hub in their user group meetings. And so I've linked to the presentation there. And this week is going to be pretty much working with the interns and some Jupyter Hub documentation before I leave for a few weeks for PyCon and move it on. So that's all I have. Oh, and Jess's education survey is very cool.
Gino, are you online? I think it's your turn after. Let's do that in order on the iPad.
Yeah, let's see. Most noteworthy is that on declarative widgets, we started some experimentation on building queries for data frames declaratively. I put a link there so you guys can go and check out screenshots that we've taken, little animated GIFs. What I think is interesting is that without any code, kernel-side code, we are actually able to do templatize a query to a data frame and then build user interface on top of that templatized query. And that works on Python, Pandas, Spark data frames, Scala data frames, R data frames, and R Spark data frames. So one declarative notation for all, which is kind of cool. So just go to that PR and check it out. And if you guys have comments, let me know, because it's still work in progress, but I think it's pretty cool. And then the other thing is there's this bug on IPyWidgets that it's pretty bad for declarative widgets. It's number 554, and I think I mentioned it last time I talked. I would like to help fix it, but I looked at the code and I really don't understand what it's doing. But the net effect is that it just re-renders output cells every time you save the notebook. Every single output area is re-rendered, and that causes declarative widgets to basically go back to the initial state. So if anybody can go there and comment and maybe give me a hint of how to properly fix it or fix it themselves, that would be great. And that's it. I think you're on mute, Matthias.
Yeah, we discussed that here, and I think we know the fix, and there is a fix in progress. We can see that applying.
Awesome, excellent.
So who's next? Min is not here because it's 4th of July in Norway. He's asking if we should publish Jupyter IPython articles next. We're going to write at some point on the Journal of Open Source Software, who was announced not that long ago. I saw that too, and I was thinking the same thing. So for me, it's a +1. I don't know if some of you also have ideas. And next, it's Darian. Are you there?
Yeah. So for the past month or so, I've been working on porting the Qt console functionality to Jupyter Lab. And at this point, there's more usability, so I would encourage anyone who actually has any interest in it to check out Jupyter.js Notebook and build the example and play with it. The feature most recently that is currently merged is the tooltip that you get. And if you compare, when you're typing, as you're typing, you get a tooltip. If you compare the behavior of the Jupyter Lab version to the Qt console, they're very different. The console explicitly has logic that says if the character that you just typed is the open parens, only show tooltips for that. And the Jupyter Lab version doesn't do that. The Jupyter Lab just displays anything the kernel gives you if there's a tooltip to show. And the reason for that is because as I was writing it, it occurred to me that we support a lot of different languages, and different languages have radically different grammars from each other. An open parens in Scheme is very different than an open parens in Python. And every single character in a terse array programming language like J really does matter, and you might want to see tooltips. And so as you're playing, you might find that there are too many tooltips and it's annoying because you're writing Python, but you might consider how we should deal with this. Maybe a kernel should send back some sort of guidance, like a regular expression that the client uses. Maybe the kernel can send back some sort of metadata about how important the information is so the user can pick what sort of tooltips I want to see. But basically just play with it and see if it inspires you to come up with some sort of solution, or if you don't think it's a problem. It might not be a problem for most users. I kind of personally want to see a little bit less, even though it's not in my way. I still think I would want to see less, but other people might have a different impulse. Anyway, that's what I've been working on, and I encourage you guys to check it out. It's in the Jupyter.js notebook repo, and when you build examples, there are two examples. There's a notebook example and a console example, and you can navigate to the page when you run the main.py file.
So I wouldn't worry about replicating the exact behavior of the Qt console, because the Qt console is quite old. So if there are changes in behavior, it's fine.
Yeah.
I think that the Qt console is roughly a notebook with less feature, where you cannot edit previous cells and you just append cells and you have less UI. And this is something we have already have talked some times ago, and it's something which is not only for Jupyter Lab, which is across all front end. Like even Atom had peers who work on Atom had these questions, but it requires a lot of change of protocol. So it might be something to write clearly in a corner and rediscuss maybe at some dev meeting later.
Sure. Yeah. Yeah. I mean, there are things. So, for example, we have now a front end MIME type that is different from plain text, that is application vendor Jupyter console text, because the actual kernel is sending us back text with escaped terminal sequence characters, which actually is not valid plain text. So it's actually misusing the MIME type. And the client right now is just copying it over and pretending it's getting something different so that it can render it properly. And so that's the kind of thing where we might want to change the protocol, because we're actually doing something that's against the spec of what plain text means. But in this particular case, we may end up putting slightly more behavior in the client, at least initially, and then later move stuff into the protocol, because it costs less to put stuff in a client and experiment and then have it propagate downward.
Okay, that makes sense to me.
And that's it for me. I think the next person is you, Jason.
So Steve and I have been working a ton on the document architecture for the new notebook. So no blockers, no questions really for the group, I think, at this point. But by this time next week, probably we'll have something for the group to play with and give feedback on. Well, I'll let Steve address that. Matthias?
Yep. Sorry, my computer has difficulty with the video turning in the back. I think Chris is next.
Yeah, so I'm just keeping on with the Phosphor repo merge, tidying up commands right now at the moment. One question I did want to bring up to the group is, we're doing the big squeeze or whatever we're calling it, to reduce the number of repos we have in Phosphor, because we were at like 25, and that was way too many for us to maintain. Just with the CI systems and the testing and the documentation, all of that, we ended up with like something like 19 files in one repo just to support one source file, which wasn't really scalable. And as these things start to be merged down together, we just kind of picked 3 and split it up with core, UI, and Phosphide. I'm kind of questioning now, like whether even those 3 are necessary, given that we're not having like some top level index file that re-exports everything, and we're already doing path-based imports. So we're actually like importing from like phosphor core /lib/patterns, whatever, so that Webpack doesn't, bundle up everything in the entire Phosphor repo, and you're only actually still getting what you're using in the Webpack bundle. Is it even necessary for us to have 3 repos at this point? Even with 3, we're still running into some version syncing issues. Like if I decide I want to add a feature in Phosphor UI, which requires some addition to Phosphor Core, I have to first go update Phosphor Core, have it fully tested, release it, bump out a version before I can ever pick it up in Phosphor UI to even test it to see if it works out and does what I want to do in the experimental, working through the experimental new feature in the UI repository. So I'm wondering, it would definitely be easier from a development perspective to just have one repo that has everything we need in it. That's just basically well factored in terms of folder structure, and then you can just import from path whatever you need and Webpack it up, and you're only going to get what you use. So I kind of wanted to get what people's opinions were on that, or how they feel about a handful of repos versus one repo versus. I mean, I think we're all in agreement that the explosion of repos is not what we want. So I guess if anybody has anything that they want to chime in on that, I'm all ears.
I think my biggest concern is we want to move our stuff to use the new Phosphor stuff. So another major delay in getting 1.0 out is impacting our work. How much time do you think it is to consolidate the three repos into one repo?
Probably 40 minutes.
Okay, then that's not a big deal. If it's going to take a couple of days and you're reworking things and everything, then maybe
No.
using the 3 days, using the 3 repos for now and then consolidating in the future would make more sense. But if it's just like an hour project or something, then I think it makes sense to have one repo. I guess it would also make sense to have Phosphite as a separate repo, since that's sort of built on top. I mean, I don't know. You could draw the line a lot of places, I guess.
Yeah, so that's basically it on my end. If anybody has any opinions they want to shoot me offline, you can reach me there too. So.
I guess I'm next. As Jason said, we've been working on the handling of models and a kernel execution, application state, and who owns that. Jason linked to the issue, the PR on Jupyter.js UI, where we implemented the base level part of that. Right now I'm working on incorporating those changes into the notebook, cleaning up the notebook models and views. And we'll just keep marching forward on that. And then that should get us to a point where we have a pretty stable architecture for Jupyter Lab, and people can start building extensions on it. And that's it.
Peter, are you online? Yes, I see you, but no camera and no mic. Okay, so we'll skip you for now. And Nick?
Nothing in particular, just probably check out Kajero. It's kind of interesting. It's another React-based notebook, JavaScript only. Also working on some of the increasing calls for help on documentation and tools for doing extension testing and all that stuff. So yep, nothing to show yet there, but got some good stuff coming.
Okay. I think that's it. Anybody has something else to say before we stop the recording? No? So thank you very much. Let's try to focus on all those issues that we need to fix. And thank you for being here. See you next week's internet, and otherwise see you on Twitter, GitHub, and etc. Bye.